No.
If we defend the God world, we're going to do so transcendentally and revelationally, and they're both inseparable. But if he's gonna say that all circular reasoning is off limits, then how does he justify his own ability to reason about anything when he says something, all circular reasoning is off limits? Because you presuppose the basic reliability of your reason. So, Sean, when you oppose circular reasoning, how do you avoid violating that in defending your own reason? How do you do that, Sean?
I'll bring him up and let's see what Sean has to say. Good question, Darth. I'd like to know the answer as well.
Yeah, so there's a plethora of compelling arguments for the existence of God. If you look up Josh Rasmussen's argument from Arbitrary Limits, if you look up any of the arguments that Alexander Pruss and Robert Koons have put forward, Richard Swinburne, all these contemporary philosophers have put forth a plethora of compelling arguments that I suggest you guys look into, because they're not question begging from the
Can
start.
you answer the question?
That's one of the most compelling things about them. No, I'm not answering your question, right? I'm going back to the discussion that we were having before I was moved down to.
No, you accuse me of circular reasoning. I
At
want to
least
see how
don't
you.
interrupt
I
him,
want to
Darth.
see how you avoid circular reasoning yourself.
Darth, let him make his point.
Yeah,
Be quiet. You're
you
not
can
a mod,
avoid
Gospel.
circular reasoning when you make
You're not a
arguments,
mod either, Darth.
and that's how
Would
you
you
do it.
remove
You
Gospel,
don't
please?
assume. Oh yeah, just remove anybody who you don't like.
No,
Exactly, that's what to
before
do.
you came up here.
So,
I asked you a
as I
question
was
before you
saying,
came up here. Would you answer the
So as
question?
I was saying, a compelling argument for the existence of God is one that isn't going to presuppose God, because that's just going to be question begging off the bat. And that's just going to be easily dismissed, right? As opposed to any of these arguments that Robert Koons or Alexander Pruss or any of these intellectuals are putting forward.
Okay, can you answer my question, please? When you reason that we are guilty of circular reasoning, do you employ circular reasoning when you hold that your reasoning is basically reliable? Okay.
No.
Okay. How do you defend that your basic reasoning is basically reliable non-circularly?
It's a brute fact.
A brute fact would be one that is unexplained. It would be unintelligible and uninterpreted.
That doesn't mean it's unintelligible. It just means that it doesn't have a further explanation.
No. So then it would just
You're
simply.
just confused.
Hold on a second. I'm not confused here. Please stop trolling. If you say that it's a brute fact, so are you saying that your reason operating in a basic, reliable way just simply is without any defense?
So when I make an argument for or against the existence of God, I'm going to
reason. You said reason is a brute fact. Can you address
I'm going to start with the assumption that you and I can both reason and we can both logic.
No, are you employing circular reasoning when you start with your reasoning?
No, I just told you that it's a brute fact. You just don't understand the difference
it's an
between
assertion.
circular reasoning and a brute
So in
fact.
other words, it simply exists without a rational defense then. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's certain things that you can present brute facts for that have to be assumed in order to continue.
Well, a brute fact would be something that is stipulated to exist without any reason identifiably how or why it exists. Okay, are we clear on that?
Yeah, there's not going to be any further justification for why you and I are able
So
to.
are you asserting it arbitrarily?
Reason.
Are you asserting that you have the basic reliability of reason? Are you asserting it arbitrarily?
No, arbitrariness is when something is asserted for no reason.
Okay,
It's
what is the rationale why basic reliability of reason exists? What is the basic reason? What is the basic rationality as to why basic reliability of reason exists. What is the reason for that?
All humans have basic capabilities to reason and use logic, and it's
It's
built
not. You're
into
not
your.
answering the question.
Stop interrupting me, and I'll answer. And
Well,
I'll
you're
finish
dodging as
answering
you
your
usually
question.
do.
No, I'm not dodging
You're
anything. All
wasting
right.
time.
Listen, man child. Let me finish, and then you'll get your answer. Okay. So, built into your intuition, yes, even someone like Darth Dawkins, built into their intuition from the time they're a small child, is the ability to put two and two together, right? And that's an intuitive fact that is not, uh, you're not able to get around unless someone has some sort of, mental issue where they don't
Okay.
perceive reality in the same way as everybody else, right?
You're not addressing the question. Now,
That is the
when
addressment
you
to the
okay, when
question.
you
There's
your
nowhere
the
further to
basic
go.
okay, your basic
This is
reliability of
we're at
reason.
bottom here.
You said okay, is your invocation of the basic reliability of reason? Is it a non-arbitrary declaration?
I've already
See, this is
told you it's not arbitrary, and that's why we're
good.
going around in
Okay, if it's
circles
not
because
arbitrary,
we're at bottom.
explain to me how you invoke the basic reliability of your reason. Since it's not
We've hit
arbitrary,
bottom.
may I finish, please?
It's
Listen
assumed
to
that you and I are able
okay.
to reason. Look,
So are you
Greg Bonson doesn't
you would
say that
hey
anybody
Roy, can
can't
you
logic.
moderate here,
He
please,
says you don't
Roy?
account for logic. So
Okay,
if you want to make an
listen
argument about
carefully. I know
what
someone's
accounts for
feeding you
logic, then
DMs.
go
I know
ahead.
that, yeah. Listen carefully. Now, are you opposed to all forms of circularity?
No, I'm not opposed to all forms of circularity.
Okay, good.
I'm opposed to premise circularity, which is the
Okay.
circularity you employ when you argue for God from a presuppositional argument. I'm
Do
not
you
opposed
avoid
to
that
rule
circularity?
circularity,
How do you
which are
justify the
unavoidable
non-God world
rules
then?
of logic that must be adhered
Yeah,
to.
yeah. You're wasting our time. You're doing
No,
what you always do.
you're
Now,
wasting
how do you
my time.
defend? How do
No,
you
you're
defend?
wasting my time.
Okay,
Now
you know what,
stop
Roy, can
wasting
you
my
just remove
time.
him? This is just bickering.
Stop wasting my time and make
Roy,
an argument
I
for God.
explained
In
to
fact,
you
you
Okay,
need to make
2 minutes
guys,
an
ago that he's a
argument.
troll. Okay,
I understand.
this is a
I
waste of
understand.
time.
I understand. I don't know, Sean. I'm going to give Sean the benefit of the doubt
He
here.
always behaves this way.
Okay, well, let me find out for myself. So, is there anybody else that wants to pick up where we're leaving off? Because I do agree, Sean, that you're not answering Darth's question to his satisfaction. Okay, but you don't have to. Okay, I'm getting to know you. I want to get to know you. Maybe there's something that I will say or that you will say that will help both of us in our walk, individually, collectively, whatever. I totally believe that. I believe that a clock is a dead clock, a broken clock is right at least twice a day. Now I believe that. Take that for what it's worth. That is not an insult. That is not a slight. That is just saying that when you take the stage and you start with in the beginning, not God, I already know you're wrong. Okay. But just because you're wrong doesn't mean I don't want to hear you out if you're going to be civil. So I am like Darth. We take the same position. We start in the beginning, God. Okay. And as the mod, I would like to open the room up to see if anybody else has any either questions for you or would like to continue what they've already heard, make some sort of commentary. That's what we're
Yeah.
here to do. So let's
How do you
start with.
Can I?
non-circularly defend the falsity of
Okay, so hold on a second, Roy. I just want to piggyback on what you just said, and I'm
Okay.
sure that you'll agree with this. We just don't merely start with God. We are starting with God because God has revealed himself to us
Correct.
even through our
Correct.
self-consciousness. So our starting point is revelational in nature, and without which we could not invoke and instantiate God. So we're not just simply just saying, well, we're going to assume this starting point because it makes the world meaningful to us. We're starting revelationally that God reveals himself even within our self-consciousness that he is.
Totally agree with that, Sean. It's because I didn't just
Okay, can I comment on
say.
that real quick?
Let me just double down on what Darth said, and you may have the floor. Yes, sir. So I'm not just saying one day I woke up and I'm going like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, there's got to be a God because. No. God called me. I heard him. I said yes. And when God calls you, it would be nice for you to say yes as well, but you have the option to say no. So I just want to make sure you understand that.
Yeah, so that's fine. I'm an agnostic. Maybe God will call to me one day. Who knows, right? My heart isn't hardened, okay? But the point is, what you just said, when you say I start with God, okay, and God is the necessary precondition for everything that I believe, that's a statement of faith, which is not a logical argument, right? And there's nothing wrong with statements of faith. My mother is a true faith believer. People of faith all over the world are doing great things, and that's purely rational. It's a rational thing to do as well. But it's not an argument, and it doesn't enter into philosophical discourse. What you're basically saying is you abdicate the floor. Basically, you are
Okay,
not
here's
interested
the
in putting forth
problem with
enough.
this. Here's the problem with this, okay? Because if you need an argument for everything, then you
I
you
didn't
can't
say you need an
invoke,
argument
okay?
for everything.
Okay, here's the problem. You claim that you're an agnostic. So you are claiming that you're suspending judgment about the existence or non-existence of God. So I will ask you a very simple question, and I don't need a long response. All I want to know right now is, are you willing right now, and will you affirm and assert that all of the facts that you invoke, that they necessitate referencing the necessity of God? Will you affirm that?
Well, you could just ask me, do I affirm that all the facts do not necessitate God? And I'm also going to say no, because as I told you, I'm an agnostic,
No,
and
I
that's
asked
not
you a
going to make me
question. That's a completely evasive response to my question. Will you assert right now that all of the facts that you talk about, that come out of your mouth, will you affirm right now that they necessitate referencing the necessity of God? Will you affirm that?
I'm agnostic on that state of affairs.
No. I didn't ask you what you know. I said, will you affirm it?
Yeah, I'm agnostic, so I can't affirm it.
I didn't ask you what you know. Okay. I
Yes, you
said,
did.
will you affirm that the facts that you invoke, that they necessitate, will you affirm it?
I can't affirm something I don't know.
So the answer is you will not affirm it. Is that correct?
No, the answer is I don't know.
Now, I didn't ask you what you know. See, this is the problem, Roy, and everyone else that's listening. Sean is a purposely deceptive and
Here we go again
deceitful
with the
individual.
personal
Okay. No,
attacks,
would you
poisoning the
not?
well.
Okay, please don't overtalk me. Otherwise, you're going to get moved back to the audience. Now, this is a completely deceitful response here. He keeps on wanting to claim that he's in a position of neutrality, but this is a falsehood, because either the facts that one invokes will be either with reference to God or not. Now, the facts that you invoke, I asked you, will you assert right now that they necessitate it? I said, will you assert that? The answer will either be yes, I will affirm that, or no, I will not affirm it. So what is your answer?
Obviously, I don't affirm it. What are you talking about?
Okay. So then you, in your mind, you invoke facts by choice without referencing the necessity of God.
I
Your
don't
facts
know. I
are.
don't know if God exists or not.
I didn't ask you if you know. I'm not discussing what you know. I'm pointing out what you do. All right. So you do invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God. Isn't that correct?
No, some facts I invoke might reference God,
No,
and I'm
sir.
just not
No,
aware of
sir.
it
I
because
didn't
God
ask you if
exists
they
and I don't
might
know.
or could be. This is how deceitful these people
Well,
are.
look, this
Okay.
is just a bad
Either okay,
question.
it's not a bad question because it's in the form of the law of excluded middle. Something is either A or not A. I've simply
That doesn't
plugged
make
in
it a
a
good
value.
question.
Please don't, Roy, would you do me a favor? If he keeps on over the talking, can you please move him back to the audience? This is what he does all the time. He just bickers. Okay? He knows what he's doing. This is a form of trolling light. Now, you invoke facts. I'm talking about what you do. I'm not asking you what you know. I'm asking you what you do. You do invoke facts without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God. Isn't that what you do?
No, that's your assertion.
Okay, we're done. Okay, Roy, this guy is completely dishonest.
I'll
I mean,
okay. Let me take over,
this is
Darth. I got
disgusting.
this.
It's
This
just
is
a
disgusting.
reprobate.
I got this. Okay, Darth,
This is what
go
they're
ahead.
left with. Okay,
Okay,
just be lying about what they're doing.
I understand. Darth, go ahead and let me take over. Go ahead and make a sandwich or something. Help yourself out. I'm gonna go ahead and let the room do what I said earlier. I don't know Sean. I do know what Darth has said. I get it, but I need to know Sean for myself, because maybe Sean might not treat me like he treats Darth simply because I'm not Darth. So if someone has anything as far as commentary, a question for Sean, right now it's going to be the Sean show for a bit, because I want to really get to know Sean, and I want Sean to feel, that he's being treated fairly here. And so Sean, let me say this. When Darth gave you a question, you did your best. I believe. That's what I'm going to believe. If you didn't, then shame on you. But I do believe you did your best to answer him the way that you could or thought you should answer him. And finally, you admitted what he was looking for, and I applaud you for that. So thank you. So does anybody have anything for Sean at this time, or some commentary, anything at
Yeah.
all? And let's go for it. Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, Sean, Darth also there's another question that Darth asked you that has not been answered. And that was, what was your non-question begging argument for the falsity of God?
Yeah, sure. I can give you a non-question begging
Yeah, go
argument.
ahead. A non-question begging argument for the falsity of God. Let's hear it. And you cannot presuppose that facts don't exist without God, because then that would be question begging, right? So let's hear your non-question begging argument for the falsity of God.
I can't suppose that facts don't exist without God. Why would I
No,
do that as
because
an
because
example?
be- because listen. If your criteria for an argument for the existence of God, when we're presenting it, is that we cannot suppose, when we present facts, that they are indicative, revelatory, and dependent upon God, then you cannot do the same on your end. You cannot presuppose that the facts that you're asserting, when the argument that you're going to give, exists without reference to God. Anything that is doing that would be question begging for your position, which is that God doesn't exist. So, what is your non-question begging argument for the falsity of God?
Yeah, sure. So there's a number of different arguments that I could
Let's
make
hear. Let's hear
against.
one. Your best one. Let's hear it now.
Well, I'm not
Jay,
sure what my best one is.
hold on, Sean. Sean, Jay, we don't need that attitude. I just want to say, because Sean's playing the game as best as he can, as far as I'm concerned. I want to get
I
to
was
know
listening. I
Sean,
was
but
listening to this
Oh,
entire
come on,
conversation, and
Roy.
Sean is a
Come
completely
on.
Sean is completely. I mean, he's making me sick to my stomach, and so I want to get an
but you
answer to
don't
this
Don't
have
be
to
question.
be here.
evasive,
But you
I
Roy.
want
don't
to get
have
an
to
answer
be.
to this question.
You don't have to be here. All I'm saying is cut the attitude. That's
All
all.
right, Sean, what is your non-question begging argument for the falsity of God? And you cannot presuppose that the facts that you're going to assert do not exist indicatively of God. It's your one argument, your best one.
Yeah, I'm not sure what my best one is, right? But just one that jumps to mind as being compelling for me is if I look at the world and there's the possibility that God exists, and there's also the possibility that God does not exist. And these are two options that I look at in the world. And I just sort of tally up all the possible explanations for why the world is the way that it is, and I look at it whether God exists or whether God doesn't exist. There is no relevant data that fails to explain the world at least as well as the God worldview does.
Okay, does that fact that you just asserted, does that fact exist with dependence upon?
No.
Okay, so then you just presuppose the falsity of God. So you just question back. So
No,
do you have a
I
non-question
said
begging
from
argument
the
for the
outset
falsity
of
of
the
God?
argument that we
No,
assume that it's
listen,
possible
listen,
that God
listen, listen,
exists.
Sean. Sean, listen, listen. You just made an accusation, and you do so in all the other sophist atheists. They do this all the time. They will ask you for a question begging argument, or sorry, a non question begging argument. And in doing so, they're asking the Christian or whoever's going to present the argument for God that they cannot, in their worldview, assume that God exists whenever they're presenting facts about the world, which is an absurd uh, thing to ask somebody to do. So I'm going to shove your face in the absurdity of your own question and the absurdity of your own charges. Okay, if you require that somebody who is going to present an argument for God cannot present these facts with the assumption or under the worldview where God is going to be that which is the ultimate and that thing that all these facts depend upon, then you cannot do the same on your end either. Which means that when you're asserting facts, any fact X, Y, Z, all of those facts individually and collectively, they cannot exist in your worldview, or they cannot exist in your argument in a world where they are not dependent upon God. Because if that was the case, you're arguing for the falsity of God. So then you can't assume that facts exist where God doesn't exist either, right? Because then you're just arguing in a circle according to you, right? So I want to hear an argument where you do not presuppose the falsity of God when you're asserting these facts, because you just presented an argument and I asked you, does this fact exist with dependence upon God? You said no. So let's hear an argument that's non-question begging, where you do not first presuppose the falsity of God, and let's see if you're a rational. Let's see if you're a rational individual who can present a rational argument for your atheism. So the first argument was a fail. Do you have a second argument you can give?
I think if you stay within the framework of my argument instead of going outside of it and asking me whether the facts that I invoke are necessary to God or whatever, then you won't get confused
Sean?
and think that I'm presupposed. No, don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. I let you finish, right? So let me finish.
Hmm.
Then you won't get confused and think that I'm begging the question that God doesn't exist. At the outset, I'm saying that it's possible that God exists. And I'm not even saying in the conclusion of my argument is a defeater for the existence of God simpliciter. I'm not saying that it's completely rules out any logical possibility of the existence of God. What I'm saying is that if the existence of God becomes superfluous in my worldview, i.e., all the things that I look at in the world have causal, natural explanations, and there's no need to posit a God, and probably therefore God doesn't exist. Doesn't mean that God doesn't
Okay,
exist,
Sean.
period.
Yeah, you're
And
not
there's
listening.
nothing in there.
There
Yeah,
there are there are
again,
there are at
yeah,
least
Jay, let me
two
just
or
make a
three
comment,
issues
Jay.
that I
Jay,
yeah.
let me just make a comment. Again, this is the deceptive nature of the response. He's trying to represent himself as being neutral. This is what the vast majority of unbelievers try to promulgate, right? They're not neutral. This is a false claim, right? Just like they
This
walk
is
into a pawn
even
shop and
even
they want to
people who
say,
make arguments
let
for
me
the
finish.
existence of
Let me
God and who are
finish.
true
Okay.
believers
He's already
accept
admitted
what
that
I'm
the
saying.
facts that okay, could we silence Sean here? This is what he does, right? He's already admitted that he invokes facts without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God. This is what he does. So he will then say, but I'm not saying God doesn't exist. I'm saying God possibly exists. Well, first of all, this is a contradiction in terms. He's saying two things. On the one hand, he's saying, I'm not making a judgment about the existence or non existence of God, but he has made a judgment about God in that he invokes facts without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God. This is what he does. And when we point out what he does do, that he does invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God, what he does,
I think
he
you're
then says,
confused.
"Well, okay, Roy, can we move him back to the audience or mute
Yeah,
him?
not
Thank you."
not yet, Darth. Not yet. Okay. So does
Okay,
anybody else have
can I
anything
just
for
finish? Can
Sean?
I finish?
Okay.
So
If
he's
you
what he's
listen,
doing.
Darth, hold on. There's other people that just came on stage. You said, "Can I move them to the audience?" I said no. That means you're finished, at least for now. Let me go around the horn and we'll get back
Yeah,
to you.
can you let Darth finish what he was saying?
Okay. Go ahead, Darth.
Yeah, what we have here is absolute verbal gymnastics and deception. On the one hand, he will admit, like pulling teeth, that he invokes facts without referencing the necessity of God. This is what he does. But then he wants to turn right around and says, oh, I don't believe either. I don't know either. It is the same pseudo claim that he's suspending judgment, but he hasn't suspended judgment. What he has decided that facts can be invoked without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God. So he's continuing this charade that he's suspending judgment, and he's not. He's not suspending judgment. If he believed that it was necessary to reference the necessity of God, then he would say so. But because he does not believe it is necessary to reference the necessity of God, that is what he does. He doesn't do it. So what he does do reveals to us what his belief state is. But then he turns right around and says, well, I don't believe either. But you see, your actions speak louder than your words. What you do, what you choose to do, is reflective of what you believe. You do invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God. But then you turn right around and say, but I leave God as an open, the existence and non-existence of God is an open question. But it's not an open question. That claim that you're making is about as real as somebody walking into a pawn shop and says, I want to sell you this Civil War memorabilia. And the pawn shop owner says, no, this is a counterfeit. You're making a counterfeit claim when you claim that you're neutral or suspending judgment. And we know this is a counterfeit claim by what you do. You do invoke facts without referencing the necessity of God. So what you do contradicts your claim as to what your position is. And I'm done.
First thing I want to
Can,
say
can I
is,
respond?
Sean, thank you very much for waiting your turn. I have to say that that I have to commend that. That was amazing to hear you do that. Okay, so I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and yeah, I commend where commendation is due. So, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I hear where Darth is coming from. Um, it, I'm not. I don't think I'm being duplicitous or anything when I say that I don't know if certain. I don't. You're right. I don't. I admit that I don't think that facts are invoked necessarily reference God or anything. But I don't think you want to say that whether anything fact that I invoke necessitates God or not falsifies the existence of God, or that any claim that you make necessarily proves the existence of God, right? Because that would sort of go outside our abilities, right? So it's not really relevant. Like, yeah, I'm not, and I didn't say I didn't pass judgment either. Like, yeah, I am on the side of the fence that I don't think um, that I lean towards God doesn't exist. I'm just saying that I don't say that it's impossible that God exists, and I don't think that there's an argument either way that can falsify or prove the existence of
You're
God. There are
contradicting
arguments
yourself.
that we can render. There are arguments that we can render um, that are in support of one position or another, and that's all that I'm offering. And that's all that's on offer in the realm of philosophical discourse, whether we argue for or against God. So there's lots of compelling arguments, as I said, lots of compelling non-question begging arguments for the existence of God that aren't going to necessarily, uh, falsify or that aren't necessarily going to prove that God exists.
This is what we call a wall of words, what you
Okay,
just
wait a
said
second.
there.
Wait a second.
He did
Darth,
not
Darth, Darth,
specifically address
Darth,
what I said.
Darth. No, no, you're done.
Can I go?
Now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So on the Christian worldview, God created the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. So God is the final reference point. That means that all facts that are invoked are going to stand in relation, either directly or indirectly, from God. So when you reject that, or you do not acknowledge God as the final reference point, then you have at the very least implicitly denied God. Now, your own criteria was that that a worldview, I suppose, needs to be justified. That's why you're asking for a justification for the biblical worldview. But I'm wondering if you can meet your own criteria. There is no neutral ground. We are presupposing the truth of God, and you are presupposing the truth of not God. And that's why you're asking for evidence. So I'm wondering if you can meet your own criteria and give us a rational explanation of how you came to the conclusion that your not God world is actual.
Yeah, I think there's
Non-question.
yeah, I think there's considerations from the logical problem of evil. I think that that's very difficult for a an omnibenevolent God. I think there's logical problems with the concepts of omnipotence and omniscience.
Can you just do
I
one
think
before you do a Gish Gallop? So I would like to address your assertion that somehow there's a problem with evil. You're going to need to show, in order to substantiate that, you're going to need to show that somehow this problem of evil, or the evil that God allows, somehow overwhelms his overall plan of goodness and salvation. Are you able to do that?
I think so, yeah.
So you're omniscient, and you can know that the evil that God allows is going to overwhelm his plan of salvation and goodness. You're able to do that?
No, I can't falsify the possibility that God has a moral reason that I'm unaware of
Okay, then you don't have
that
an
allows the
argument
existence of
ultimately.
evil. Well, look, let me finish, right? And maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from. I don't have an argument that falsifies the possibility that God has a moral reason for allowing evil to exist in the world. I just have an argument that goes against the probability that God has a moral reason that I would rationally accept.
Yeah, so you have an argument that God has somehow hurt your feelings, but it doesn't follow from that God is false. So do you have another argument?
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Okay, so you said you brought up the problem of evil as if it is somehow a defeater, but as upon closer look, it turns out it was just a complaint. Do you have a defeater?
No, I never said it was a defeat. It's problematic for me. If it's not problematic for you, then there's no problem.
Yeah,
Answer the
it's
question,
not
please.
problematic for me. So do you have so
Yeah,
again the
so it's just
question
not
that's been asked,
convincing to
how
you.
is it that God is false?
No, no, God isn't false. It's just not an argument that would be convincing to
Yeah, can I ask you one more question?
you. Go ahead.
Why should arguments be logical?
That's just a necessary precondition for
Can you answer that
argument.
without begging the question, sir? You've
No,
just begged
no,
the
no,
question
no,
by
I
giving me
can't.
a logical response.
No, I explained this earlier that rule
Okay.
circularity is needed in order to
So
establish
do
logical
you
grounds.
yeah, my last question. Do you have a justification that is not arbitrary as to why the Christian cannot first presuppose God?
Yeah, because
Why you will allow some yeah, I'm
that's
almost
going
done.
to
Why
violate.
you will allow some arbitrarily allow some circular arguments but not others?
Yeah, because that's going to violate the law of parsimony, right? So we can both agree that we can both reason and use logic,
We
but
don't
we
both
can't
agree though,
agree.
sir. We disagree. And
Well,
that's the problem here. And
but that's gonna bar.
you haven't been able to provide a reason that's more than just an arbitrary opinion. You can
Well, if you
arbitrarily
think
select which arguments that are circular that you will allow. So we will just disagree.
Well, if you
We're
think that
talking about
logic is, well, I already explained why. There are certain logical axioms that are it's necessary that we agree on in order to discuss whether 2 + 2 = 4, or whether an apple is an apple and not an orange. And if you disagree on that, then you're right. We're not able to discuss logically because you don't accept the axioms of logic.
so again, do you have an argument that is not arbitrary or fallacious to show how God doesn't exist or emotional?
Yeah, I don't think any argument I've given is arbitrary or fallacious, unless you want to show
I've
me
already,
what the fallacy was
well,
in my argument.
I've already done that.
But you just said that the logic itself is fallacious. You didn't
Yeah.
say
So
that any of my arguments are
your
fallacious.
problem of evil was emotional. Okay. Your
You didn't
position
even
that
hear what my
some
argument
circular,
was on
hold
the
on, I'm
problem
almost
of
done.
evil.
Your Well, yeah, I did. I said you're going to have to show that the evil that God allows somehow overwhelms his overall plan of salvation and goodness, and you're not going to be able to do that. So ultimately, you just have an emotional complaint. Your arbitrary
Well,
argument was
that's an
that some
assumption.
circular, yeah, hold on, I'm almost done. Your arbitrary argument was that some circular arguments will be valid and some won't. And so we disagree on there too. So do you have anything for us today?
Well, yeah, that's fine. Look, an argument is not going to convince everybody, right? That's not what arguments are designed to do.
So he doesn't have anything,
So
basically, is
yeah,
what
so
he's
you don't
saying.
have an argument, is what you're saying.
Well, no, that's not the same thing.
Yeah, Sean is just
I just wanted to
Sean is
know if you
just an
guys had.
look,
I wanted to know
Sean,
if Darth, like it was
you're a
told you.
willful
Oh,
ignoramus.
okay.
You want to be ignorant. You want
Oh, well,
to be a
that's
moron.
unnecessary.
Sean, it's not unnecessary. It's perfectly necessary given the you know hours of conversations that we've had that I've listened to and that we're having right now. It's perfectly necessary, and you need to hear this because
No, it's out of line. You
Okay.
need to stop being disrespectful.
there is
Okay. So, Jay, I've warned you, cut the attitude. I'll warn you one last time, and then I will drop you. Okay? There's no need for attitude ever in this room, ever. Okay? So we're going to
I
move
don't have
on.
an attitude. I don't
Okay.
have an
Well,
attitude.
that's fine. But
I'm speaking very assertively and very strongly. I don't
okay.
have an
So I'm the
attitude towards
boss.
against him.
Yeah. Okay. So just go on mute. Who's next? Who wants
Yeah,
to go next?
I got a new question if it's all
Well,
right.
what we're gonna let's finish this off really quick, and we'll go to a new question. So we'll get that new question to you in a second, Paul. Anyone else want to address what they've heard about what Sean is doing, what we're doing? Yeah, because I think this is a needed discussion, always, always. And if there's a good moderator in the room, and I am calling myself a good moderator, not necessarily great, but good, because I can see things that maybe you can't, whoever you are, when you start to attack a person. And that is
oh, you
not
mean like
allowed.
you attacking the other brothers in Christ and shutting them down from finishing their statements?
It,
Hold
Is
on,
that
exactly
the?
like that, right?
wait.
Yes. With my
Yeah,
tongue is firmly planted to my cheek. Yes, just like that.
yeah, yeah.
So
You're shutting down brothers in Christ who are trying to call people to
hang
repentance.
on. Okay. So,
Hang on.
so, so, so the only reason that this conversation has gone as long as it has is because one, I need to know that you guys understand that I'm letting this go way longer than I would have any other conversation because I don't know Sean and I want to know Sean. And so far, Sean has made a new decision after I told him new information about this room. And I find no fault in Sean on what he's doing and how he's being treated. I will address that, and I have. And Sean's been very reasonable as far as how he's treating you all.
Wait a minute.
Okay, so
You think that he hasn't been
He,
evasive?
okay, no, no,
he's
no, no.
been
I didn't say
passive
that, Darth.
aggressive.
Darth. Stop.
That's a
I didn't
legitimate
say.
question,
I
Roy.
didn't say. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you. Just go on mute.
I'm not looking for an argument. I asked you a
Okay.
question.
Well, yes, of course he's evasive,
Thank
but I like the way that his other stuff has overridden his evasiveness because I want to get to know him. I'm not going to drop him just because he's being evasive. I
overridden.
want to get to know. Dart, I'm not going to argue with you. Go on mute. Is there
It's not
anybody
an
else
argument.
who
I mean,
wants
it's
to
just
talk?
he's been entirely evasive.
Darth,
Okay,
stop it.
make excuses for the unbeliever. Go ahead,
Okay.
make excuses.
All right. You have your opinion. You versed it. Go on mute. All right. Anybody else want to address Sean, share anything with Sean, give him your perspective? And if not, we will move on to Paul. Anyone else? Go ahead and open up your
I
mic.
would
You have,
like to ask Sean a question.
go
Well,
ahead.
can we? Oh.
Obviously, Sean, I don't know you, and I do believe in the Bible and such forth, but everyone seems to be attacking you. But can you just clarify your position, why you don't believe in God?
Yeah. Yeah. What exactly would you like me to address?
Well, because so far I've been listening to the conversation and everyone's putting forward their case that you have to believe in God, that God is a Christian God. And I don't necessarily come with that viewpoint. I want to be able to hear both sides of the story. So rather than shutting you down because you don't believe necessarily in how they view God, so I was just wanting to know basically, what is your position?
Yeah, there's a lot of different. I mean, primarily, uh, uh, I'm not moved by the same faith that I see to be the strong justification for most people's belief in God. I don't know I don't know why that is or what the case for that is. Um, and I'm interested in hearing what the arguments are and not hearing what the non-arguments are, what all the perspectives are for why people believe. Like I know plenty of believers, and I'm surrounded by believers in my life. Like I said, most of my family are pretty strong believers. Um, and I don't know if it's just doesn't comport with my psychology or the way that I look at the world, or what it is. So I don't know if I could give you like a really simple answer about everything that justifies my position.
Sure. Has there anything happened in your life then that's, had an effect on you to stop believing in God?
Um, I don't think so. Not in terms of like an event or like a traumatic, you know, thing that happened or something that made me like lose my faith. I was raised as a Methodist. So I do think, although different people have different perspectives, I think lots of people would say that, I was never really a Christian or whatever. Maybe they're right. I don't know. But I was raised in the Methodist tradition. At some points, I drifted away, and there wasn't like a single event. It was just sort of like a gradual transition away from belief to non-belief.
Sure. That's what confused me because obviously you mentioned about your background of being Christian and such forth. So that's why I just kind of wanted to figure out where you were coming from rather than everybody attacking you when there's some of us in the room that don't know you, such forth. So I was just curious, that was all.
Yeah, can I just clarify? We weren't attacking Sean. Sean made an assertion that there is neutral ground, and he wasn't able to defend that, and we're still waiting. That's all. We're just
Yeah,
trying to
Oh,
ask. It's not the
Sean's
position of the
Sean's
room that
claim to
assertion.
neutrality, Sean's various profession of neutrality is contradicted by what he does. He has made it clear that he invokes facts without referencing the necessity of God. This is what he does. Now, if somebody tells me that they're pro life, but they go get an abortion, right? If a woman says, "Oh, I'm pro life," but they go get an abortion, then what they do contradicts their claim, right? If somebody tells me that we should not violate somebody's consent, but they actually commit rape, then what they claim is inconsistent with what they do. Sean, like every other atheist out there who claims that they are suspending judgment in regards to God, they'll say, "Oh, I don't know, I don't know." But we've made it clear. Let me ask Roy this question. Roy, is it not clear that when Sean invokes facts, he does so with purpose, without the necessity of referencing to God? Is that what he does?
I believe he does. Yes.
Good. Then, therefore, what Roy does is inconsistent with his claim to suspend judgment about God. Because if he
You mean Sean?
believed that, I misspoke. Okay, Sean, excuse me. So this is what we find with a lot of the duplicitous unbelievers on Clubhouse and on Discord. They will claim, "Oh, I'm suspending judgment about God. I don't know." But all we have to do is inquire as to what they do. Do you invoke facts without referencing God? And rather than answer the question honestly, they'll go, I don't know. Well, actually, they do know. They know that they're invoking facts without reference to the necessity of God. They know that that is what they do, yet they claim, I don't know. So what Sean does contradicts his claim to neutrality. And I'm done.
I think that's a false dichotomy.
So let me reset the room for those who are new here. We have some new people. Raise your hand if you want to join us. I see you, Steve. You've got your hand up, and I've been wanting to bring you up. So if you're still there and you hear my voice, just leave the room and come right back, and I'll invite you up because it's not working. And if you're away, just go ahead and accept the offer. So, guys, what we're talking about here today is atheism. And I don't know Sean, but I want to know Sean. So, Sean came in a little, not good for me as the
Aggressive. He
sole mod
came
of
in
the.
aggressive. It's okay. You can say it.
No. I would not use that word. So let me talk.
Well, then that's poor choice of words.
Okay, well, let me talk before I move you to the audience. So Sean has a different viewpoint than I do. I have a different viewpoint than Sean does. I start with in the beginning God, Sean doesn't. So, from that point of view, I've heard others who say that he is a this and a that, and I don't know. Let me decide for myself what he is. But as soon as Sean wasn't abiding by the rule of the room, which he probably didn't know, I set the rule for the room, told him what I'm going to do. And he's abided ever since I brought him back up, because I did drop him to the audience. I brought him back up, and he's been nothing but civil. And so I want to continue this discussion with Sean as long as Sean wants to. Sean, you can
I must have been
say X
listening
name
to another
at any
conversation.
time. At any time. Okay, who keeps talking over me? One more time, and I'm going to drop you. Please do not do that. I cannot think when I hear somebody else's voice. So, with that in mind, I know that other rooms here on Clubhouse and elsewhere probably, I do not visit those rooms if there's no mod who keeps it civil. Don't overtalk each other and keep it civil. That's it. Just respect the other person. When you start attacking the person, I'm dropping you. Attack what they believe. That's it. Now, with that in mind, Sean, I want you to go ahead and share right now and see if anybody else wants to join into this conversation. Somebody's got a lot of background noise. Paul, do
Before
not
we do that,
unmute. Do not unmute. So,
before you do that, could I raise the issue real quick? When the Christians were attacking,
okay, one more time, and I'm dropping you, Paul.
I was
You
asking
need
you.
to. You
I
need.
was asking you a question.
Okay,
I
you
was trying
ask
to
it.
ask you.
All right, I'll bring you back up. You're absolutely rude, and I just you need to take a page from Sean. So for the new people in the room, like Brian and Nikki and Matt, I know you're coming into this. You know how I mod. You know what I do. If it wasn't for Sean not being known by me, I would have cut this conversation off a long time ago. But there are various people that are atheists that I absolutely would love to have in the room and have dialogue with, me personally. Now, whether you can take it or not, whoever you are, that's fine. You don't have to be on stage. Just go down there into the audience and listen, or listen on replay, and you can fast forward of the spots that you can't take. But don't tell me what to do with Sean, because it's not going to happen. I'm going to do what I need to do with Sean for the betterment of everybody in the room. Again, I remind all of you, there are people in the room that are here every day. They're regulars. They want to hear what they need to hear because of where their position is and where they are in their journey. I always take that into consideration. It's not just about the person speaking with Sean or Sean, okay, when I have this type of dialogue. So, with that in mind, Nikki, do you have anything? And we'll go to Matt next for Sean. And if you don't, just say pass.
Yes, I do. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Nikki, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a very interesting and very sensitive conversation. And let me just set for the record that I am a knowing believer of my creator, Yah. Let me just say that for the record. And I also believe that we need to meet people, and I can appreciate you, Roy. We